He was a millionaire who started as a slave, a holy terror to her enemies and a saint to her people. A ghost who built an empire in plain sight. They called her the mother of civil rights in California. But in the whispers of San Francisco's elite, and later in the screaming headlines of the newspapers that destroyed her, they called her Mammy Pleasant, a name she despised, a name meant to shrink her, to make her harmless. But Mary Ellen Pleasant was never harmless. She was one of the most powerful and dangerous women of the 19th century, a capitalist who funded revolution, a kingmaker who posed as a servant, and a ghost who still haunts the city she helped build. Her life was a masterclass in deception, a necessary lie told to survive in a world that wanted her, either in chains or invisible. She told so many stories about her own origins, it's hard to find the truth. She claimed she was born free in Philadelphia, the daughter of a Hawaiian merchant and a Louisiana voodoo priestess. Other accounts say she was born into slavery in Georgia or Virginia. The truth is a ghost, lost to a world where a person's value was written on their skin, and freedom was a story you had to invent for yourself. What we know is that as a young girl she was sent to Nantucket, Massachusetts, a hub of abolitionist Quakers and the heart of the whaling industry. There, she was indentured. Not quite a slave but not truly free, working in a shop run by a Quaker family. It was here her real education began. Not in books, but in observation. I have let books alone, she would later say, and studied men and women a good deal. She learned the flow of money, the weight of secrets, and the art of being underestimated. While serving tea to abolitionist leaders, she listened. She absorbed the coded language of the Underground Railroad, the talk of conductors and passengers, of secret routes to freedom. This was a language she understood. It was the language of her own life. In Boston, she married James Smith, a wealthy abolitionist who passed for white. Together, they were not just a couple. They were a conspiracy. They channeled his fortune into the Underground Railroad, spiriting escaped slaves to freedom in Canada and Mexico. Smith's death in the 1840s left Mary with a fortune. Some say as much as $45,000. And a deathbed, promised to continue the work. With slavers hunting her for her rescue work, she fled east. After a possible stop in New Orleans, where some say she learned from the voodoo Queen Marie Laveau herself, she took her inheritance and her second husband, John James Pleasant, and headed for the edge of the world, San Francisco. She arrived in 1852, just as the gold rush was turning the muddy boomtown into a crucible of greed and ambition. California was a so-called free state, but it was still a place of brutal racial lines. Black people could not testify in court against whites. Fugitive slave laws were ruthlessly enforced. Mary Ellen Pleasant arrived in this chaos not as a revolutionary, but as a cook. It was the perfect disguise. She arrived with over $15,000 in gold, a fortune at the time, but she let the world see her as a servant. While working in the kitchens of the city's wealthiest men, she listened. She picked up stock tips and investment secrets dropped in casual conversation. Information worth more than gold. She took that information and built an empire. She invested in everything: laundries, dairies, restaurants, and boarding houses. She bought shares in Wells Fargo and the Bank of California. She understood that true power wasn't in politics, which was close to her, but in money. In the 1890 census, when asked for her occupation, she didn't say cook or housekeeper. She wrote one word: capitalist. But her capitalism was a form of warfare. The money she made wasn't just for her. It was a war chest for her people. Her boarding houses became safe havens for escaped slaves. Arriving on the western end of the Underground Railroad, she found them jobs, gave them housing, and paid their legal fees. To the Black community of San Francisco, she was known as Black City Hall. If you needed help, you went to Mary Ellen Pleasant. She wielded her power like a hidden blade. She was the secret force behind one of California's most important civil rights victories. In 1866, nearly a century before Rosa Parks, Mary Ellen Pleasant was ejected from a San Francisco streetcar because she was black. She sued. The case went all the way to the California Supreme Court, which ruled that segregation on public transportation was illegal. It was a landmark decision, and she was at its heart a wealthy capitalist who used the persona of a humble servant to bend the law toward justice. Her revolutionary work didn't stop at the California border. She was a friend and, more importantly, a financier of the radical abolitionist John Brown. She met with him in Canada as he planned his doomed, desperate raid on the federal armory at Harper's Ferry, an attempt to spark a massive slave uprising. It's said she gave him $30,000 for the cause, an astronomical sum, the equivalent of nearly $1 million today. When the raid failed and Brown was captured, a note was found in his pocket from someone signed MEP, promising more money and warning him of danger. For her own safety, she had to disappear for a time. But she never disavowed her connection. It was a point of pride. To her, greatest act of invisibility was also her most audacious. She entered into a business partnership with a white banker, a Scotsman named Thomas Bell. Together, their fortune grew to an estimated $30 million, which would be nearly $1 billion today. They built a magnificent 30-room mansion on Octavia Street, a palace that became the talk of the city. But to the outside world, this was the Bell Mansion. Mary Ellen Pleasant, the woman who had conceived of it, funded it, and controlled all the money within it, played the part of the housekeeper. It was a breathtaking deception. From her position as the servant, she managed their vast financial empire, hosted the city's elite, and pulled strings across San Francisco. One of her boarders, Newton Booth, was even elected governor of California while living under her roof. This fragile illusion, however, was shattered by scandal. In the 1880s, Pleasant became entangled in a sensational lawsuit involving her friend, Sarah Althea Hill, and a wealthy, powerful Nevada senator named William Sharon. Hill claimed she was secretly married to Sharon and sued him for divorce and alimony. Mary Ellen Pleasant supported her friend, testifying in court and funding her legal battle. The press, which had long been suspicious of this powerful black woman, saw its opening. They turned on her with vicious, racist fury. This is when the name Mammy Pleasant was weaponized against her. Newspapers painted her not as a brilliant capitalist or a civil rights activist, but as a schemer, a madam, and most luridly, a voodoo queen. They twisted her heritage and her power into something dark and sinister, accusing her of using black magic to control people, of running brothels, and even of murder. The attack was relentless. Her reputation was destroyed. When Thomas Bell died in 1892 after falling down the stairs in their mansion, the rumors flew that she had pushed him. Though the coroner ruled it an accident, Bell's widow Teresa turned on Pleasant, suing her for the entire fortune. Drained by endless legal battles and public scorn, Mary Ellen Pleasant, once one of the wealthiest and most powerful people in California, lost everything. The woman who had built an empire was declared insolvent. She died on January 11, 1904, in a small apartment, cared for by a friend. The newspapers that had destroyed her crowed in their headlines, "Mammy Pleasant will work weird. Spells no more." But they could not erase her legacy. She had requested one thing for her gravestone, a simple epitaph that spoke to the core of her life's purpose. It doesn't say capitalist, or millionaire, or housekeeper. It reads, "She was a friend of John Brown. Her mansion is gone now, replaced by a small memorial park, marked only by 6 towering eucalyptus trees she planted herself. They stand as silent witnesses to a life that was a storm of secrets, a forgotten earthquake that shook the foundations, Of a City and a Nation, the story of Mary Ellen Pleasant is a testament to the power of being underestimated. She showed the world that the most dangerous person in the room is often the one nobody sees. Her life is a puzzle. A ghost story where the ghosts are racism, sexism, and a history that tries to bury its most inconvenient heroes. What other forgotten figures have been deliberately erased from our history? Their stories are out there, waiting in the shadows. If you want to continue this journey into the lives of those who